Hello, today we have an amazing guest. Her name is Gabby. She is a lawyer from South Africa, Durban. Hi, Gabby. I'm happy to see
Hi,
you.
Kieran. How are you?
I'm great. And how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Gabby, before we dive deep into law and legislature, can you share a couple of words about your story? How you decided to transition and how you explored your gender identity?
Thank you. For me, from a young age, I always had this innate sense of being somewhat different. And growing up in the 1970s, 1980s, when I think the whole issue of transgender and trans people wasn't something that was really spoken about. You didn't hear about it or see anything about it generally in the media. And so I grew up having this confusion about myself, but not being able to express or verbalize in any way how I felt. And that sort of just became the way I lived. I didn't talk about it. I just kind of subverted it into my inner self and just sort of carried on with life as normal. But when I got to just after, in about 8 or 9 years ago, was when I finally sort of started to explore a bit more of myself in that sense, and started to, behind the scenes, started to experiment with wearing women's clothing, with doing makeup, and it got to the point where I finally realized or accepted that I was trans and that I needed to look for some sort of help to understand and to how I go about this process. So about 8 years ago, it was the first time I went to therapy, and in going through therapy and discussing what I'd been going through, I got to the point where I decided that I needed to tell someone. I needed to speak about it, not just to a therapist, but to someone that I knew. And I was married at the time, and the first person I told was my then wife. And subsequently, I spoke to my parents and other family members. But it took a while for me to then decide that I needed to pursue this, or not pursue this, but to transition. And I started on hormones about 7 years ago. But I found that it was a costly exercise, especially because in terms of the public health service, there's no real programs or assistance provided to transgender people, and having to then go privately and get private care was quite costly. And I then stopped taking hormones and decided that I would just carry on trying to live my life as I had been. But in the back of my mind, I always just had this feeling that, I needed to do this for myself. I wasn't being true to myself. I was becoming more and more withdrawn. And so eventually, beginning of last year was when I seriously took the decision that I needed to transition and started on hormone therapy. And for the past 13 months or so, that's what I've been doing.
And how did your friends react on your transition?
On the whole, it's been quite positive. A lot of my close friends have been really supportive. I've found that they are, although they don't necessarily know what being transgender is, or I think they've supported me in seeing that I'm being more authentic, I'm being more sociable because I'm finally being able to engage with people as my true self. And they've been very, as I say, supportive and accepting of me, which I've been fortunate. I haven't really had any negative reaction or pushback from any people close to me. So I think that's been, for me, was one of the biggest fears I had in holding me back in deciding to transition. Was how how are my family going to reject it? And yeah, it's been really fantastic that they've all accepted me.
Gabby, also, I know you started your transition at the age of 51. What are the pros and cons of transitioning later in life?
Well, I suppose with the cons is that firstly, obviously, you've gone through puberty. You've gone through all the developments of a male, and so obviously having the masculine features, which are now, quite hard to, I wouldn't say hide, but to feminize or soften in a way that it's not so obvious. And it's and then obviously, with that comes obviously the cost, because there's a lot of like feminization, facial feminization surgery, breast augmentation, which in a sense, I suppose most transgender people would like to have those procedures, but the cost is something which is quite prohibitive. I think, and then the other thing is you obviously trying to unlearn those typically male behaviors that you've kind of had over 50 years, that you've built up, that are sort of ingrained into yourself, and trying to sort of almost unlearn those now, and the mannerisms, your posture, just the way you present yourself generally in public, is quite a challenge. So, and those are things, like my voice is something that I do, that I've started with voice feminization therapy, and so hopefully that will bear some fruit later down the line, where I can have a bit more of a feminine sounding voice, which doesn't sort of give me away straight away when people meet me. On the positive side, I think I've having taken 51 years to make the decision, I've got to the point where I've truly accepted myself. And I think some people are fortunate that maybe they find that a lot earlier. But I've been through all sorts of experiences, and I can sort of carry those with me. And I've also become a bit more of a bit more thick-skinned. Where in the past I was a bit scared of what people would think, how they would react to me, and now it's, well, this is who I am. It's up to you how you react to me. I can't control that. I can just control the way that I react to other people. And I'm always very, people come up to me and want to ask me questions. I try and be as authentic as I can with them, because I think most people, when they see you out or see me out in public, their reaction is more one of curiosity, as opposed to necessarily a judgment or a negative perception of who I am.
Also, I have a lot of subscribers who are 40, 50 and older.
Yes.
And a lot of them, they have these concerns about transitioning later in life. Can it be ever too late to transition?
I don't think so. I think yeah, I don't think it can be never too late. I think if you are an older person and it's something that you've been grappling with, and for whatever reason that may be, I think for me, and I speak from my own experience, it's been fulfilling. It's like I finally, there's this weight off my shoulders. I feel lighter. I feel less of a burden. And I think, whenever you reach that point in your life, whether you be 20, whether you be in your 60s, it's something to experience and it's something to embrace. I think, I admire anyone who has that courage to accept themselves and to be themselves, for everyone to see.
Recently, I recorded an interview with a lawyer from the United States, Jessie McGrath. And we spoke about her regrets. She also started transition, if I'm not mistaken, at the age of 53. And she said that she never regretted. Have you ever had these moments of regrets?
No, I don't think so, because I've been blessed. I've got two beautiful daughters. They're both adults now, and I think that they and their acceptance of me and embracing me as being my true self is far more important to me than any regret I might have in transitioning later in life. I think I think it took me a while to say, I look forward, don't look back. Don't look back on things that have happened, because everything that has happened has brought me to this point, good or bad, and have made me into the person I am. And I think if you look back on and have regret, I think that can become consuming at times, and you forget to live in the now and also look to the future.
Since you've mentioned that you have two daughters, do you remember the moment of coming out to them?
Yeah, so I only came out to them last year. So I was about 6 months into my hormone therapy and my transition. Both of them were not. They don't live with me. They live with my ex. They live close by, but they've both been studying in different parts of the country. So they hadn't been. I'd seen them, every now and then when they come home. So when I told them, I think that their first reaction was they were not aware that this is something that I had been grappling with for all those years. But I think their reaction was that they were happy that if I'm happy, they love me who I am. I'll always be their dad, and they've been supportive. So I think, again, when I was thinking about transition, and one of the fears I had was telling my daughters and how they would react, and what our relationship going forward would be like. But again, it was a fear that I had kind of built up in my own head, as opposed to looking at this other side of it is, what if they accept me, which is ultimately what has happened.
Gabby, half a year ago, you've shared a post on Instagram, and you've talked about your first day as Gabby in your office. How did it feel?
Yes, there was some anxiety. because apart from two or three people that I worked with, knowing, one of them is a close friend of mine, and she has been sort of with me on side by side since I started my transition. So she's supported me all the way through, and then one or two others that had seen me out in public as Gabby. So when I came to the office the first time, there was the anxiety about the other staff, other work colleagues, but I also had the excitement of being able to finally, be myself at work, and the reaction that I got, support that I received from everyone, just reinforced my belief that if you're going to be true to yourself and be happy, people are going to be more supportive, rather than if you are someone who's closed off and you're withdrawn and you don't really interact with people. I'm now able to interact with them, and they're able to interact with me at a whole different level, which so it was, for me it was just reassuring that my first day wasn't one where people kind of looked at me and wondered what was this something, was I messing around, or was this something real? For me it was just another reaffirm for me that I can be myself. I can be Gabby, and people will accept me as Gabby.
And during these 6 months, has something changed in your office?
I'm no longer at that where I was. So I've started my own practice, but I still have interactions with a lot of the people at my old office. But I've met new people, because now being in a new practice and being in a different office environment, I sort of had to come out again, to the people that are in that environment. And so, I think, and you probably experience this yourself, is that you never stop coming out as a trans person, because every new person you meet, not tell them, but they realize, you're trans, and it can be sometimes a bit daunting if you have to go into a new environment with new people, and you now have, you sort of putting yourself out there every single time you go out into public. So, but the change for me has been positive. I haven't had any negative reaction, certainly, in public, apart from the stairs.
Have you ever met some sort of a prejudice or belittling you to only being trans and neglecting your expertise?
I haven't. I've been fortunate that, being an attorney, a lot of my interactions with clients are on a personal level, and a lot of my clients have just accepted me. They don't haven't been there hasn't been any prejudice or doubting my ability as an attorney. Me transitioning hasn't changed that, and I think that they've, a lot of them have realized that, accepted that, and it's been for them as well. A lot of them not having previously had any interaction with a transgender person, they've been able to, learn a bit more about trans experience, and been able to interact with me and ask me personal questions, even though, I'm dealing with them at a professional level as well. What I'm going through personally is something that they are, experiencing at the same time, because they interact now with this different version of me.
Gabby, you have two different experiences of working as a lawyer. As a male lawyer, now you work as a female lawyer. What are the differences?
I haven't had much experience I haven't encountered much differences. I think a lot of my work, although I do go to court and appear in court on occasion, a lot of my work is sort of office based. But on the occasions that I've been to court, there hasn't been a lot of negative reaction. And I think people might be a little bit hesitant to approach me, but once they do, they realize I'm still me. Just I look a bit different, and my mannerisms are a little bit different, but I'm still an attorney at the end of the day. And but yeah, I think it's been a short time now, so maybe in the next few months, as I sort of venture more and more into sort of the courts and other areas where I'm presenting more, and people meeting me more, whether my experience will change, I'm not sure.
Okay. And there is a widely spoken topic about male privilege in trans community. Before transition, we had it, we used it, male privileges. Now we can't. Can you say a couple of words about this, about your experience?
Yeah, I think being big trans, and obviously having come from being a male, I never sort of felt that there was this necessarily male privilege, but I think the way that you are perceived as a male is there's a sort of a different level of the way that people will interact with you, maybe a bit more, I wouldn't say subservient, but you have that sort of alpha male aura, and whereas now I think people are a bit more, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm also smiling a bit more, but I find that people are a bit more when they greet me, they smile, they're a bit more sort of friendlier in their approach. I'm also conscious of going out into public, and I also don't want to be in a situation where I make a connection with someone that their perception is that, well, this is just a man that's now using that historical privilege to kind of now parade around. I think male privilege and it is something that historically and is still there.
There is one quote, a great quote that you recently shared. People will stare, make it worth their while. Harry Winston. Let's talk about the first part. People will stare. How does South African society treat transgender people?
On the whole, there's been more of, I wouldn't say an acceptance, but there is an understanding of that trans people exist. I myself haven't experienced any sort of outward prejudice from people or a negative reaction. But you do, going out in public and putting yourself out there, I do get the stares, I get the second looks, and people maybe having a kind of a word with the person they're with, or whoever is with them. But I think our constitution is quite a progressive one, and there's protection for LGBTQI plus people, but I am aware that there are other areas, and maybe in the more sort of rural and areas where trans people are subjected to a lot of discrimination and rejection, ostracization from their communities. My experience is maybe a lot different to what someone else in those communities might have experienced, because I think people maybe in the urban areas have encountered more trans people, so they it's not something that's necessarily foreign to them.
Gabby, South Africa has a population of over 60 million people. Unfortunately, we rarely see any information on forums or threads about transitioning in South Africa. How does it look in reality?
I think there's quite a few organizations in South Africa that assist trans people, providing them with resources and information. But I think the public health sector is not as advanced in their programs in terms of assisting those who don't necessarily have the means to go the private route with transitioning. I know that there is, or there was a public program that has recently, unfortunately, had to stop providing HRT because it was reliant on the USAID, which, as we know, has recently been stopped, and so that organization has suddenly had the funding that it was relying on, that tap's been closed, and so those who are a bit less fortunate and don't have the means probably are going to be a bit more, or struggle a lot more in accessing the quite necessary and beneficial healthcare that we know as trans people, the gender affirming healthcare we are able to enjoy. That's an unfortunate, and I think for a lot of trans people that's going to be their reality. And so hopefully the organizations that the NGOs that provide the resources and the information will be able to get some sort of programs going where that funding might come from elsewhere to assist those with less access or less money to be able to get that treatment.
What about private insurance? Does it cover surgeries and gender-affirming care?
Not in South Africa, no. So the healthcare insurance over here, we call it medical aid, doesn't provide any assistance in terms of paying for hormones, paying for any procedures. The procedures, the surgeries are considered cosmetic or in nature and not necessarily life-saving. And so, the medical aids are unfortunately not as progressive as I think that they should be in assisting to cover some of the costs. Because even in South Africa, the number of transgender surgeries or gender affirming surgeries that are performed are limited because there aren't a lot of surgeons that necessarily specialize in it, and secondly, the cost just makes it out of any sort of ordinary person's reach. I would like to become or get more involved in organizations in trying to push for that change within the private healthcare sector, to at least start looking at providing some sort of assistance, because the cost of medical aid or medical insurance in South Africa is quite high. So you're paying your medical aid, but you're not necessarily getting that, the benefit that you would like out of it. So if there's one thing that I think I would like to change in South Africa, it would be the private healthcare sector being more advanced and progressive in assisting trans folk.
You know, that phrase, cosmetic procedures, is stuck deeply.
Yes.
If they only knew, it's not a cosmetic procedure.
Exactly.
It's a necessity for us. It's the only
Exactly.
way for us to live normally, live fully, and to be a part of society.
Exactly. Hormones can only go so far. Facial feminization surgery, breast augmentation, and obviously the gender reassignment surgery. All of that for us, it reaffirms us for ourselves and allows us to just be more satisfied in who we are. And I think, looking, some days when I look at myself in the mirror and you still see those masculine features, it can be quite, the dysphoria can, just comes out of nowhere. And despite there being progress, I kind of, it transports me back to pre-transition. You almost get a sense of I'm not getting anywhere. It's in those moments that I think if you have that ability to access that house, those procedures would be even more beneficial and assist with alleviating, those struggles that we go through on a daily basis.
I'm talking about the financial part of transitioning in South Africa. Is it expensive compared to other countries?
Yeah, from the research that I've done, it is quite expensive. If you're looking at gender affirming surgery or SSR, I think you're looking at anything in South African currency, 500,000 Rand, which, a lot of people don't even make that in 2 years, let alone in a year. That just gives an indication of how expensive it is. Unless you have those means, it's just something that's not attainable in South Africa. And when I say I know of a few people that have gone overseas to Thailand, for instance, where comparatively speaking, it's a lot cheaper for them. And also, I think the expertise over there, there's far more doctors, surgeons who specialize in that type of surgery. So I think that the cost is a lot lower and a bit more affordable for particularly people in South Africa to rather go that route than to have it done in South Africa.
This is also the reason why I chose to go to Thailand to perform my gender reassignment surgery, because local surgeons, they have performed only tens of such procedures. In Thailand, the count is over thousands. And also the price. In Europe, it's twice expensive compared to Thailand. I struggle living in a male body, and I knew from the beginning of my transition that I need sex reassignment surgery, or bottom surgery, in other words. I have started a fundraiser to cover the costs related to this surgery. Total amount needed, $14,750. I will leave the link to the fundraiser for this surgery in the description under this video. I would be incredibly grateful for any help, whether through donations or sharing my fundraiser on your social media.
Yeah, I think that's the benefit. And you also, as you say, there's a lot more surgeries performed there. And so the surgeons are just that more experienced. And with something like that, you don't want to go, you don't want to go to someone who's only done a few. It's a risky, well, not a risky, but I mean, things can go wrong. And I think that the more experienced the surgeon is and the team around that surgeon, the better. And the outcome is going to be a lot more satisfactory for the individual.
In 1996, South Africa became the first jurisdiction to provide constitutional protection to LGBTQ plus people. How does it look in reality? Is there any legal protection?
There is. So the Constitution is progressive in the sense that it prevents discrimination on the basis of one's race, gender, sexual orientation. It doesn't specifically mention gender identity, but there have been cases where the courts have confirmed that that protection extends to transgender people. There was a case about three years ago, a trans woman that had been imprisoned and was put into the male section of the prison. Wasn't allowed to grow her hair, wasn't allowed to have makeup or any item of women's clothing on her. And obviously was subjected to a lot of abuse and discrimination. And that ultimately went to court. And the court, in quite a far-reaching decision, confirmed that the prison, the correctional services staff need to address her in her preferred manner, allow her to express herself as female. I stand in the correction. I don't think they went as far as saying that she needed to be moved to the female section of the prison, but certainly that she had to be treated with dignity and respect. From that point of view, I think the courts are more progressive in the way that they interpret the Constitution and the protections that they extend to, well, in our case, trans people, but the LGBTQI plus people as a whole.
And what about the political climate? Nowadays, we see a lot of scapegoating of trans people from politicians all over the world. Yeah. It started from the USA and now it came to Europe. What about South Africa?
In South Africa, we're fortunate. I think that there are a lot of challenges in South Africa. We come from a historically disadvantaged, or a lot of the people were disadvantaged. And, I'm sure you know the history of South Africa with, what went on with apartheid and everything else. And I think that the political focus is certainly more to redress those issues and the imbalances that were caused by apartheid. And I think, when I want to use the word fortunately for trans people, our existence isn't being used as a political pawn or weapon in South Africa, where unfortunately, in a lot of other areas, particularly obviously as we know in the US, where there's been a raft of anti-trans legislation and steps to stop gender affirming care and all of that. South Africa, fortunately, we don't face that challenge as a minority.
Noticed any changes in political climate or society after Trump's inauguration?
Not in person, but certainly online. Facebook has become, and to a lesser extent, Instagram, because I think, obviously Instagram, you can control who you interact with more. But certainly on Facebook, I think the rhetoric and the anti-trans push and people hiding behind their keyboards and, being able to, make all sorts of derogatory and anti-trans comments, that is in South Africa as well. I think, a lot of the sort of the negativity that I've experienced in South Africa is more on social media as opposed to in person. I've certainly, being out and about in public, haven't come across instances where I've been, subjected to any sort of abuse or insults as a trans person.
What about the local LGBT community? Is it active?
It is. We have the annual Pride events in South Africa, normally in June. There's also a few trans-specific organizations that promote Trans Awareness Week and Trans Visibility Weeks. But in terms of sort of public activism, we don't necessarily have that. I think it's a bit more low key. But they certainly, I think, when it comes to Pride Month, the whole sort of community bands together for that. And I think, we have events, we have marches in the various cities. Hopefully, there will be a bit more of a a push to make people more aware and for us to be more visible as a community, because I think that visibility is certainly when I was younger, that wasn't there for a long time. I couldn't identify with anyone in the way I was feeling because there just wasn't that, any sort of visibility of trans people in South Africa. So I think that would certainly go a long way to, allowing people, people who may be questioning their gender identity or not sure, where they fit in, to find a community that's supportive, uplifting, and offers them hope, be who they are ultimately.
At the end of every interview, I ask my guests about hope. Is there any hope for our community?
I think there is. I think in as much as what we see going on, particularly in the US, with the pushback against or the scapegoating of transgender people, I think what it's done is just brought the community together and looking out for each other, supporting each other. And I think that bringing it back into a South African context, and I mentioned it, is that, hope is a powerful thing in being more visible, in being more not outspoken, but just more, authentic, interacting with other people. If we can in some way offer someone, our shoes that we were in prior to transition, that hope that transition isn't this unattainable or out of reach ideal, that it is possible. Yes, it's not an easy process. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of self-love, self-acceptance. But I think it's, if you know that it's the right step for you. Yeah. So I would just like to be, if I can inspire someone to see that it is, possible, no matter where you are in life, what stage you are in life, then I think that would be, quite fulfilling. If someone were to, ultimately one day say to me, you inspired me to be who I am, that would be for me, satisfying.
You're an amazing and inspiring woman. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
As you said, being visible, this is the main reason why I started this project. I spoke already to social workers, to IT specialists, to general practitioners, to surgeons, and now I spoke to a lawyer from South Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. And thank you so much for having me and for giving me this opportunity to share a bit about my story. And hopefully, as I say, if someone gets inspired by this, I think, we've achieved our goal of, offering hope.